The Galactic Council convened in a vast chamber suspended in the cold expanse of space stars, shimmered far beyond the transparent walls of the chamber as representatives of countless alien species gathered to decide the fate of humanity. The atmosphere was thick with tension and unease. The representatives of the oldest and most powerful species exchanged murmurs and glances, while the smaller races sat in silence waiting for the outcome. The debate had raged for days, with no clear consensus. The humans had caused enough trouble for the Council to finally act. They had begun expanding into space with reckless abandon. Their ships had harassed trade routes. They had caused minor skirmishes, and despite their technological advances, they were still viewed as primitive, violent creatures by many of the Council members. The most powerful species in the galaxy had long maintained order by controlling the flow of knowledge and the distribution of technology. The humans were different from the other races. They had an unpredictable spirit that made them impossible to control. Their rapid growth into the stars had unsettled the Council. They had seen the humans as a small threat before, but their recent displays of strength had forced a change in the Council's approach. They could not allow such an unpredictable species to thrive unchecked. Councillor Cthulhu, a towering insectoid with 6 arms, stood before the assembly, its mandibles clicking as it addressed the room. Its voice was a low hum vibrating through the chamber. The humans cannot be allowed to continue their expansion. They are dangerous, a threat to the delicate balance we have maintained for millennia. Their violence, their unpredictability, is a risk to all of us. We must expel them and isolate their homeworld. No more trade, no more contact. They must be cut off from the galaxy. Across from Cthulhu, the human representative stood tall in contrast to the other delegates. His eyes narrowed as he looked around the room, his voice calm but unwavering. As he spoke to the assembly, "There is a flaw in your thinking," he said, his voice ringing out across the room. "You see a species capable of greatness only as a threat and not as a potential ally. You fear what you don't understand. But humanity will not be cowed. We will rise up, no matter how many times you try to push us down." The Council murmured at the humans' boldness. Some races shifted uncomfortably, others simply laughed at the audacity of such a statement. The human was but one voice in the room against so many, yet he stood firm in the face of overwhelming opposition. Cthulhu's mandibles clicked again. "The human's words do not change the facts. Your kind is volatile. You have proven time and again that you cannot control your actions. Your reckless behavior cannot be tolerated within the order of the Galactic Council, and so the vote will proceed. The human race shall be expelled." With that, the vote was cast, and the decision was made by overwhelming majority. Humanity would be cut off from the galaxy and isolated on their homeworld Earth. The delegates turned away from the human, as if dismissing his very existence. But the human did not move. He stayed where he was, looking at each of them as they filed out of the chamber, his gaze unwavering, his words still lingering in the air, as if they carried more weight than any of them had realized. In the wake of the Galactic Council's decision, Earth plunged into chaos. News of the expulsion spread like wildfire, and the world's political systems, already fragile, collapsed under the weight of this new reality. Governments that had once been the pillars of global power fractured, leaving nations to scramble for answers. People took to the streets in protest, some screaming for revenge, others for a new path, but most simply felt a sense of crushing betrayal. The once unified world now teetered on the brink of anarchy. Earth had always been a place of division, but now the fractures were too deep to ignore. In the chaos, humanity's greatest strength began to emerge. Where the old systems failed, new leaders, unheard of in the halls of power, rose from the ashes. Scientists, engineers, and military leaders from across the world gathered in secret. Their aim was clear: survival. But it was more than just survival. It was the reclamation of their place among the stars. They could not afford to sit idly by as the galaxy closed its doors to them. A series of covert meetings were held, alliances forged, and long-forgotten technologies rediscovered. A plan was set in motion, one that would make the Galactic Council regret the day they cast humanity out. Hidden deep within Earth's mountainous regions and beneath the oceans, small research facilities came to life. They were scattered, isolated, but within them, humanity's finest minds began working tirelessly. The work was difficult, dangerous, and often shrouded in secrecy. The greatest minds of the time, engineers, physicists, military strategists, began collaborating on a project that no one had ever thought possible, building a fleet of ships capable of challenging the most powerful forces in the galaxy. They knew they couldn't face the Galactic Council with Earth's current technology, but they didn't need to. They had something more valuable than advanced tech. They had human ingenuity and the will to fight against overwhelming odds. Across the globe, pockets of resistance formed. These weren't organized armies, not at first. They were individuals, groups of soldiers, scientists, and civilians who believed in humanity's future in the stars. Some rallied behind the promise of revenge, others for the chance to prove humanity's worth to the galaxy, but all shared a singular goal: to fight back. They began gathering the necessary resources, sometimes from abandoned military bases, sometimes from the depths of scientific institutions, and began reverse engineering the alien technology that had been brought to Earth in the form of wreckage from previous encounters with galactic travelers. The secrets were locked in alien devices, their complexities a mystery, but the humans, with their perseverance and resourcefulness, began to unravel them one by one. At the same time, the Galactic Council, unaware of the scale of the human response, continued to celebrate their victory. Earth was isolated, cut off from the galaxy, and the rest of the universe carried on. But that would change soon. Humanity's quiet rebellion was growing, and it was no longer just about defense. It was about reclaiming the stars that had once been their destiny. The work was slow, but every day, humanity grew closer to something the Council couldn't anticipate. An armada that would not just challenge them, but rewrite the galaxy's power structure entirely. In the deepest corners of Earth, far from prying eyes, the first prototypes of the new human ships began to take shape. They were unlike anything the galaxy had seen, sleek and dangerous. The plans for the next step were already in motion. The galaxy had made a grave mistake. It had underestimated humanity, and that was something it would soon regret. Months passed, and Earth's transformation from a fractured world into a burgeoning military power unfolded beneath the radar of the Galactic Council. Humanity had not only survived the expulsion, they had begun to thrive in the shadows. The scattered pockets of resistance now coalesced into a unified force, their singular goal no longer just survival, but to return to the stars and prove that humanity belonged among them. The quiet construction of Earth's new armada continued, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ingenuity had always been unpredictable. Where other races relied on perfection and adherence to rules, humans adapted, creating in ways that defied expectations. The first prototypes of their warships were born from a fusion of reverse-engineered alien technology and human innovation. The ships were sleek, designed for stealth and speed, with hybrid weaponry that fused the most effective aspects of human and alien tech. The ships could cloak in the depths of space, making them nearly invisible to the most advanced detection systems. Their weapon systems, once thought impossible to create, had an eerie efficiency. Alien plasma cannons adapted to human firing systems, missiles that could track and strike through any defense. But it wasn't just the ships that made humanity's armada dangerous. It was the people behind them. Every engineer, every soldier, every scientist knew exactly what was at stake. These ships weren't just machines. They were symbols of humanity's will to fight back, and the crew members piloting them were determined to make sure the galaxy would never forget their name. They understood the Council had underestimated them, and now they would show that mistake could be their undoing. The first test run of the new fleet was a small-scale operation, a raid on a remote supply convoy just outside the borders of the Galactic Council's influence. The convoy, a series of unarmed cargo ships, was chosen because it would be an easy target for the new ships. But the humans had a deeper purpose. This wasn't just about raiding. It was about sending a message. The attack came without warning. The human ships emerged from the dark side of a nearby moon, cloaked in the emptiness of space. The cargo ships didn't stand a chance. The strike was swift, efficient, and brutal. Before the convoy even had time to react, half of its ships had been disabled, and the rest were scrambling for evasive maneuvers. The human ships moved like ghosts, flickering in and out of visibility, launching precise strikes that crippled the convoy without leaving a trace. The attack lasted no more than a few minutes, and by the time any council forces could respond, the humans had vanished back into the void, leaving only a shattered convoy behind. News of the raid spread like wildfire. The council, initially dismissive of humanity's ability to strike back, now found themselves caught off guard by the unexpected efficiency and cunning of the human fleet. The galaxy's smaller species, who had long been wary of the Council's dominance, began to whisper of the humans with a mix of fear and curiosity. Was humanity truly a threat, or had the Council made a fatal mistake in underestimating them? Back on Earth, the leaders of the Resistance gathered in secrecy. The first successful strike was a symbol of their potential, but it was only the beginning. Humanity's Armada was growing, and every ship built, every weapon tested, brought them closer to their ultimate goal, not just revenge, but the reclamation of their place in the galaxy. The war had begun, and the Council had no idea what was coming. The Galactic Council, still reeling from the surprise attack on their convoy, couldn't shake the feeling that something larger was at play. The whispers across the galaxy had shifted. What had been dismissed as minor skirmishes and isolated acts of rebellion was now seen as a growing threat. The humans, it seemed, were not only capable of taking on their forces, they were doing it with style and efficiency, and that made them far more dangerous than any of the Council's leaders had anticipated. In response to the growing human threat, the Galactic Council assembled an enormous task force. Hundreds of warships, many of them the pride of their respective species, were sent on a direct course toward Earth. This would be their final push to end the human uprising before it gained too much traction. The mission was simple: eliminate the human fleet, destroy any remaining resistance, and make an example of Earth for any other species who dared to defy the Council. The plan was airtight. The humans had nowhere to hide. They were surrounded, outnumbered, and outclassed. But the Council underestimated one thing: humanity's ability to improvise. On Earth, the human fleet had grown larger and more sophisticated. The ships, now numbering in the dozens, had undergone several modifications after the initial success of the surprise raid. The human engineers had learned from every battle, every test, refining their ships to become even more lethal. These were no longer just prototypes. They were fully realized war machines, with cloaking systems that could evade the most sophisticated galactic sensors, weapons capable of disabling entire fleets in moments, and commanders who understood how to strike without warning. The humans had learned a valuable lesson during their first raid. Speed and surprise were their greatest assets. The human fleet, fully aware of the Council's approaching Armada, laid out a plan that would turn the tide in their favor. The idea was simple: ambush them, strike hard and fast, and leave before the enemy had a chance to retaliate. As the Council's ships approached Earth, they entered a region of space where humanity's fleet was waiting. The vast, empty void was the perfect battleground, a place where the human ships could disappear into the darkness. The human fleet had already planted false signals, sending the Council's sensors on a wild goose chase. The Council's ships believed they were engaging in a standard operation, their sensors showing only faint traces of human activity scattered across the area. What they didn't realize was that the humans were waiting, patiently, silently, biding their time. The ambush began when a lone human ship, just one, emerged from the shadows. It was a decoy, designed to draw the Council's attention. The Council fleet, eager to strike back, immediately locked onto the ship and launched a volley of weapons. But as the shots landed, the human ship vanished into the darkness, leaving behind only the echo of its disappearance. It was a trap. Suddenly, dozens of human ships flickered into view, emerging from all directions. The Council fleet, thrown into disarray, struggled to react. The humans attacked with deadly precision, their cloaking technology making it nearly impossible for the Council ships to target them. The human fleet was everywhere at once. Plasma missiles tore through the hulls of the largest ships, their engines exploding in fiery bursts. Smaller, more agile human ships darted through the battlefield, striking with surgical precision, disabling the Council's weapon systems and crippling their communications. The Council's Armada, once an unstoppable force, was now a disjointed, panicked mess. Within minutes, the entire battle shifted in favor of the humans. The ambush had worked beyond anyone's expectations. The human fleet, having dealt a devastating blow to the Council's forces, pulled back into the void before they could be fully engaged. The Council had suffered severe losses. Ships were destroyed, commanders were captured, and the once proud fleet was left in shambles. On Earth, humanity watched as the news spread. Their first decisive victory against the Council had been achieved. The message was clear. The humans had not only survived their expulsion, they were now a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy had learned its first lesson. Humanity would not go down quietly. The Galactic Council, now shaken to its core by the catastrophic failure of its massive task force, scrambled to react. The humiliating defeat at the hands of the humans could not be ignored. It was clear that the human resistance had not only survived, they had grown stronger, bolder, and more capable with each passing day. News of their victory spread quickly through the galaxy, and a shift began to take place. The once unquestioned dominance of the Galactic Council was now in serious jeopardy. In the aftermath of the ambush, the Council's remaining forces retreated to their fortified homeworlds. For the first time in generations, the galaxy's most powerful species were on the defensive. The human fleet, emboldened by their success, continued to grow, their numbers swelling as more and more races joined their cause. The rebellion that had started as a desperate fight for survival had transformed into a full-fledged movement, and the humans now found themselves at its center. The smaller, oppressed species who had long suffered under the Council's rule were the first to rally to humanity's banner. They saw the humans' boldness as a sign of hope, a chance to finally free themselves from the chokehold of the Council. The humans, who had once been isolated and cast out, had become the symbol of resistance, proof that it was possible to fight back against the Council's iron grip. Slowly but surely, human ships and their new allies began to take control of more strategic territories, pushing back Council influence in the far reaches of the galaxy. As the rebellion spread, the Council convened an emergency session. Their leaders, bruised by the unexpected setbacks, realized they were facing an unprecedented crisis. The uprising was no longer just a nuisance. It was a direct challenge to the established order. The Council's most respected generals and strategists had failed them, and it was clear that the human fleet, with its unorthodox tactics and relentless pursuit of victory, could not be ignored. This was not simply a war for survival. It was a war for the very soul of the galaxy. On Earth, the human leaders knew that the Council would retaliate with everything they had. It was only a matter of time before another full-scale invasion force was sent to wipe them out once and for all. But the humans were prepared. Their fleet, now a formidable force of highly advanced warships, had been reinforced with new technologies and battle-tested strategies. Every engagement had provided new insights, and the human commanders, once inexperienced in intergalactic warfare, were now seasoned veterans of a relentless conflict. The next phase of the war would be even more dangerous. The Council was certain to strike back harder than ever before, but humanity had the advantage of numbers and determination. The insurgent fleets, led by human commanders, launched a series of coordinated attacks on Council outposts, supply chains, and trade routes. They struck fast and without warning, crippling the Council's infrastructure and sowing chaos wherever they went. The Council's once pristine reputation as the ultimate power in the galaxy was rapidly eroding as more and more species began to question their leadership. Despite the mounting losses, the Council was unwilling to back down. They were desperate to crush the rebellion once and for all. They assembled their most advanced fleet, a force of unimaginable size and firepower, and set their sights on Earth. This time, they would not underestimate the humans. They would bring everything they had, and they would destroy humanity's uprising for good. But the humans were ready. They had learned how to strike fear into their enemies and how to exploit the Council's greatest weaknesses. They had turned the tables, and now, the real battle for the galaxy was about to begin. As the galaxy's most powerful species reeled from humanity's relentless advances, something unprecedented began to happen. The oppressed races, long subjugated by the Galactic Council's iron-fisted rule, saw in the humans something they had long given up on: a chance for freedom. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. The galaxy's marginalized species, those who had quietly simmered in the shadows, now saw an opportunity to rise up against their longtime oppressors. The human-led rebellion had become a beacon of hope, and it wasn't just Earth's ships that fought against the Council now. The galaxy was waking up. On the war-torn planets once controlled by the Council, revolutions ignited. In the outer systems, former slaves and colonies who had suffered under the Council's ruthless regimes began to rally around the human banner. They had seen what the humans had done with so little, how they had turned the tables against the Council's elite fleets, and they knew it was possible to challenge their oppressors. The human fleet's strength, forged in the fires of necessity and ingenuity, now became the symbol of an uprising that spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Humanity's leaders were quick to capitalize on this newfound unity. The human warships, already formidable, were now joined by a growing alliance of ships from formerly subjugated races. Their combined forces made the human fleet stronger than ever before, and their newfound allies brought with them valuable knowledge and resources. No longer was it just about technology. Humanity had found its greatest strength in unity, in the bond between those who had suffered under the Council's rule. Together, they formed a new alliance, one that promised to reshape the galaxy's future. From the Council's perspective, this was the worst possible outcome. They had anticipated that the human resistance would falter, but they never imagined that it would spark a full-scale revolt. The Senate chambers of the Council were filled with panic as representatives from the various species began to argue among themselves. Some were calling for peace talks, hoping to negotiate with the humans and their growing coalition. Others, more hawkish, demanded immediate retaliation. The Council's unity was crumbling, its long-standing dominance slipping through its fingers like sand. The situation became more dire when several key member species began to pull away from the Council, openly declaring their support for the human-led rebellion. The once unified Galactic Council had splintered, with its core members divided and weakened. The Council's failure to maintain control over the galaxy's less powerful species had exposed the cracks in their system, and now it was too late to patch them over. The humans, seizing the opportunity, began making bold moves. Their ships struck Council trade routes, disrupting vital supply lines. Entire fleets of Council ships were ambushed and destroyed by human forces and their new allies. The tactics the humans had perfected, stealth, speed, and precision, made them an unpredictable and deadly enemy. The Council's best military minds, unable to adapt quickly enough, found themselves outmatched at every turn. But the humans weren't just disrupting supply lines. They were sending a message that the galaxy had underestimated them, that the days of unquestioned dominance by the Council were over. The humans had become more than just a thorn in the Council's side. They were now a movement, a force with a vision for a new galaxy. A galaxy where power would no longer rest solely in the hands of the few, but would be shared among those willing to fight for their freedom. Across the galaxy, the tide of the war was turning. The Galactic Council had once ruled the stars with absolute authority, but now they were fighting to hold on to what little power remained. Humanity and their allies had not only proven that they could stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's elite, but that they could change the very nature of the conflict itself. The Galactic Council had long prided itself on its ability to maintain control of the galaxy, but as the days wore on, the evidence was undeniable. The Council's once absolute grip was slipping. Their once unbreakable fleet had been shattered, their trade routes severed, and their alliances fractured. Humanity, once cast out and seen as insignificant, was now a force to be reckoned with, and the Council was left scrambling to keep what little remained of their power intact. Earth, now the heart of a growing rebellion, had become the focal point of the conflict. The human-led alliance had launched a series of calculated strikes, each one more daring than the last. The human fleet, reinforced by those who had joined their cause, was now a well-oiled machine of precision and efficiency. They had learned how to fight smarter, not just harder. And every victory, every successful mission, brought more allies to their side. But the Council was not finished yet. With their forces scattered and their leadership fractured, they turned to their last remaining option, an all-out assault on Earth. They had no choice but to use everything at their disposal. The remnants of their most powerful fleets, alongside troops and ships from those loyal species who still clung to their fading power, were mobilized. This would be the Council's final stand. They knew that if Earth fell, the rebellion would crumble. They had to make this attack decisive, swift and overwhelming. On Earth, the human commanders were aware of the impending assault. For days, they had been tracking Council movements, their spy networks buzzing with activity. The humans were ready. They had prepared Earth's defenses, bolstered by the full might of their allied fleet. The planet's surface, once marked by the scars of war, now gleamed with the reflection of hundreds of ships, ready to defend their home. Humanity had been cast out, but they had never been more unified. Now, they stood on the brink of the greatest battle the galaxy had ever known. The Council's fleet emerged from the darkness of deep space, a vast armada of ships stretching across the stars. The sheer size of the force was overwhelming, an overwhelming wave of metal and firepower that seemed poised to wipe humanity out for good. Thousands of ships, massive dreadnoughts, advanced cruisers, and smaller tactical vessels gathered at the edge of Earth's orbit. It was a force unlike any the humans had ever faced. Yet despite the overwhelming odds, the human fleet did not flinch. Humanity had a simple advantage: experience. Every battle they had fought, every hard-fought victory, had prepared them for this moment. The Alliance's combined forces were now a diverse and well-coordinated military machine. The humans, and their allies, knew how to work together seamlessly. They had learned to exploit the Council's weaknesses, and now they would use those lessons to their advantage. The battle began with a single deafening roar of plasma fire. The human fleet engaged the Council's forces in a brilliant display of coordinated chaos. Cloaked ships darted in and out of the fray, striking with precision before vanishing into the void. The human fleet's advanced weaponry, laser beams, plasma missiles, and electromagnetic pulse bursts, ripped through the Council ships with terrifying accuracy. The Council's forces, overwhelmed and disoriented by the sheer speed of the human assault, found themselves scrambling to retaliate. Human commanders called out orders over the comm channels, their voices steady and calm. Every move was calculated, every action part of a grand strategy to ensure that Earth would remain free. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, debris scattering across space as the two fleets clashed in a titanic struggle for control of the galaxy's future. It was clear now that the humans had become more than just a resistance. They were a force capable of reshaping the galaxy. As the battle raged, the Council's once imposing fleets began to crumble. Their commanders, once so sure of their victory, now found themselves questioning their very survival. The human rebellion had become something far greater than the Council had ever anticipated, and the price of their underestimation was one they could no longer afford to pay. The battle for Earth reached its zenith, the clash of titanic forces echoing across the stars. The Galactic Council's remaining fleets were faltering. Their ships, once symbols of power and dominance, now limped through space, battered and broken. Humanity, once dismissed as insignificant, was proving that their strength wasn't in their numbers alone, but in their resilience, their innovation, and the unity they had forged in the fires of war. They were no longer the underdogs. They were the galaxy's new power. The human fleet moved like a well-rehearsed symphony of destruction. Every vessel, from the smallest fighter to the massive warships, worked in perfect coordination. Human ships darted in and out of the fray with unnerving precision, targeting weak points on the Council's fleet, exploiting every flaw. Plasma torpedoes exploded through enemy hulls, and railguns fired in perfect synchronization, crippling the once proud warships. Every move was calculated, every strike a message to the Council. Humanity would not be defeated. But the Council was not done yet. In a desperate final move, they deployed their secret weapon, a massive planet-killer-class superweapon that had been hidden in the depths of their fleet. It was a weapon unlike any other in the galaxy, capable of obliterating entire planets with a single strike. The Council's plan was clear. They would unleash this devastating weapon on Earth, ending the rebellion once and for all. They could afford no further losses. Earth would burn, and with it, humanity's defiance would be extinguished. The massive superweapon fired, a blinding beam of destructive energy, tearing through space toward Earth. The human fleet, already fighting on all fronts, had no time to react. It was a death sentence for the planet, unless they could stop it. In that moment, humanity's greatest strength revealed itself. A small group of human fighters, led by Commander Alyssa Stark, one of Earth's most decorated war heroes, took the boldest gamble of all. They had developed a plan to disable the superweapon, a plan that had never been tested but was humanity's last hope. The fighters, flying in tight formation, made a mad dash toward the massive weapon, cloaked by the darkness of space. They would have only one shot. With the Council fleet distracted, the small squadron of human fighters plunged forward, their cloaks masking their approach. They were almost invisible to the enemy sensors. As they neared the superweapon, Stark's voice crackled over the comms, calm despite the chaos surrounding her. "We're not running. We're ending this today. Get in close and hit them where it hurts." The fighters swarmed toward the superweapon, using their cloaking devices to avoid detection as they launched a concentrated volley of missiles and plasma charges at the weapon's vulnerable power core. The energy shield protecting it flickered, but the weapon's defenses remained strong. It wasn't enough to stop the fighters, though. Stark and her team pushed through the fire, launching their final payload directly into the heart of the weapon. For a moment, everything stood still. Then, with a deafening explosion that rocked the entire battlefield, the superweapon detonated in a brilliant flash of light. The shockwave rippled through space, knocking both Council and human ships off course. The weapon that had been humanity's death sentence was no more. The humans, having dealt the final blow, did not stop. The Council's fleet was now in complete disarray, with half of their forces obliterated or retreating. Humanity and their allies pressed forward, launching wave after wave of attacks that obliterated the remaining enemy ships. The final push came swiftly, and the once great Galactic Council was no more. Their fleets were shattered, their command structure in ruins. As the last of the Council's ships exploded into the void, the galaxy held its breath. The war was over. The rebellion had won. Earth, once cast out and discarded, had risen from the ashes to lead a new era in galactic history. The human fleet, battered but unbroken, returned to Earth in victory. A new day dawned for the galaxy, one where humanity's place among the stars was not just secured but earned. The Council's reign had ended, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Earth was no longer a forgotten backwater. It was the heart of a new alliance, a new hope for all those who had once been oppressed. The galaxy had learned its final lesson. Underestimate humanity, and the cost would be far higher than anyone could ever imagine.